Hi, my name is Celine Sadawi, and for this assignment, I chose the article Eating Christmas in the Kalahari by Richard Borshay Lee. I chose this article because it really does show how cultural misunderstandings don't usually come from disrespect, but it comes from different worldviews and perceptions. The author in the story, you'll see how he genuinely thinks he's doing something respectable and admirable and kind, yet the reaction he gets was completely unexpected, and it surprised him. So, what I liked about this article is that it doesn't just describe cultural differences, but it shows how your perception on that culture can shape meaning and how easily we just judge before asking questions and really figuring out why do they do what they do and how does it work. And we don't really try to understand the context behind their behavior. So here's a quick summary. In the article, Richard Borshay Lee, who is an anthropologist, is living with the Kong Bushmen. I think I did that right. And he's in the Kalahari Desert. Around Christmas time, he decides to show his appreciation by purchasing an ox for a large community feast that he's hosting. And so he went and he chose the biggest, meatiest, oldest, most impressive ox that he could find, believing that the bigger the better, and the bigger the more generous. However, once people see the ox that he bought, they automatically started criticizing it and saying, "What is that?" They called it skinny, they called it old, they called it worthless. One man asked him, "Do you expect us to eat that bag of bones?" This reaction obviously confused Lee because he's like, whoa, I totally thought I ate that up. He thought he did his big one, and he starts to worry about Christmas and the Christmas feast. He's like, dude, this is gonna go completely wrong. Where did this go wrong, and why do they hate it? Anyways, moving on Christmas Day, the ox is slaughtered, and it turns out to be full of fat and full of meat. And everybody's eating, and everybody's dancing, and they celebrate for 2 nights without any problems. So more than enough food. So later, Lee learns that the criticism was actually on purpose. They did it on purpose and culturally meaningful, and it wasn't genuine dissatisfaction. This article shows that worldview shapes how people interpret meaning around, specifically in this situation, generosity and respect. From Lee's perspective and point of view, Christmas is a time where kindness is shown through giving and is usually met with appreciation and gratitude. And he explains this by saying, with us whites, Christmas is supposed to be the day of friendship and brotherly love. So because of this belief, Lee expects his ox to be treated and responded to pretty positively. An example of this worldview shaping meaning is when the Bushmen reacted to the ox. Instead of praising the ox, they criticized it and called it worthless. And one man, Gago, explains, "We always speak of his meat as worthless." And from Lee's perspective, that feels insulting. But within their culture, it's a way to prevent arrogance and maintain equality throughout the community. An example of ethnocentrism in this article is Lee's assumption that generosity should be accepted and treated the same way across all cultures. And when the Bushmen criticize the ox, they say, or Lee admits that their jokes and wisecracks practically ruin the holiday for me. Lee initially interprets the behavior as ungrateful and disrespectful because he's judging it through his own cultural lens and his own cultural expectations. He even says, "What I can't figure out is why the Bushmen went to such lengths to criticize and belittle the ox that I had bought for the feast." So this shows how his worldview has already shaped his idea of and meaning before actually understanding the context of their culture. So the story does challenge the idea that one culture's values are superior or normal. Lee eventually learned that the Bushmen criticized gifts and hunting successes as a way to maintain equality throughout the community. Mazo explains, "This way we cool his heart and make him gentle," when Lee eventually asked, what the heck's going on here? This interaction between Lee and the Bushmen really does show how, in our lens, we might see something as, that was really rude, that was really disrespectful. While in the other culture, it has a complete opposite meaning. It can mean acceptance. It means respect. So this article restates and reinforces the idea of cultural relativity, which is that behavior should be understood within their cultural context rather than just judged through the outside standards that we place on people. So in my Middle Eastern culture, physical affection is a very common way of showing respect and welcome, especially with family and guests and elders and younger people or elders. And in my Middle Eastern culture, physical affection is a very common way of showing respect and welcome, especially with family and guests and, older people to younger people. So things like hugging or kissing on the cheeks are normal and super meaningful, and it means hello, welcome. Someone from a different culture might see this as weird and inappropriate and uncomfortable. Just like in the article, the intention behind the action can be easily misunderstood if someone doesn't actually understand the cultural context. So this actually ties back into the article when Lee realizes that sharing food and meat is simply a part of everyday life for the Bushmen. Lee states, to kill an animal and share the meat with people is really no more than Bushmen do for each other every day. In the same way, physical affection in my culture is super normal, even if outsiders don't see it that way. I think a key best practice for cross-cultural communication would be asking questions instead of making assumptions, and actually figure out, like, why are they acting this way and what does it really mean within this culture. Lee in the beginning doesn't understand the Bushman's behavior until he finally asks them, and they act that way. And when he does, Tommaso responds, "Because you never asked me." I think this moment shows that miscommunication honestly stems more from a lack of genuine curiosity and wanting to learn and know more than just disrespect. And effective intercultural communication requires us to be open and to have humility and to have a willingness to learn from others in other communities and other cultures rather than just judge based on your own standards. So I experienced a similar cultural misunderstanding when I brought my boyfriend home for the first time, and he met my grandma, and my grandma had heard a lot about him prior, so she already loves him. And so he came in and she gave him 2 kisses on the cheek, which is normally what she does and what a lot of Middle Eastern people do, and that's her way of showing, hey, you're welcome, and to show warmth and acceptance. And he was like, whoa. And from his worldview, that level of affection, so fast and so soon, so sudden, almost felt surprising and super confusing. My boyfriend interpreted my grandma's behavior without understanding the cultural meaning behind it. So the most important lesson I learned from this article is that meaning is shaped by culture and worldview. What feels respectful and generous and nice and awesome in one culture might be the complete opposite in a different culture. This article really did teach me to pause before judging somebody's behavior and to ask questions and to really figure out what it's all about before jumping to conclusions. And moving forward, I can apply this lesson by being more open-minded and aware that my perspective is just one out of the thousands in this world, and it's not universal, and that is super essential for intercultural communication. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you later while I am indulging my Thin Mints.